Hey everyone, and welcome back to Retro Legends. There was a time when the Mega Drive meant speed, power, and being modern. Sega built its whole identity on one clear idea: games that were faster, more aggressive, and more spectacular. But in this big and diverse collection of games, not all of them kept that promise. Some failed in how they were designed, others in how they were made, and still others in understanding what games even are. They weren't just games that didn't do so well. They were real examples of what happens when big dreams, deadlines, and technical limits don't quite balance out. Don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more trips into the world of retro gaming. Let's get started! The competition between Sega and Nintendo wasn't just about selling games, it also directly changed how games were made. Sega chose a fast-paced way of working. They wanted to release many games quickly, to always have new things on store shelves. This meant they had to plan very carefully with tight deadlines and not much time to make changes. Inside the teams, the work was split up. Testing and making the games perfect often got squeezed to meet deadlines. The final versions of the games weren't always completely finished, but they were good enough to be released. A lot of the time, quality control focused on making sure the game didn't crash, rather than making sure the whole game felt right. Licenses made this process even bigger. Games based on movies or TV shows had to come out at certain times. This meant they couldn't be delayed much. So, the game's design had to fit the time they had, not the other way around. Game mechanics were made simpler, content was cut down, and there wasn't much time to try out new things. On the technical side, this meant incomplete systems. Animations weren't finished, things bumped into each other weirdly, and the difficulty wasn't set right. These things by themselves might not seem like a big deal, but together they made the final game not as good. It wasn't that people weren't good at their jobs, but the creative process was squeezed. The ideas were there, but they didn't go through all the steps needed to become strong systems. When time was the main problem, the focus shifted from making things well to just getting them out the door. Among the most notable cases was Rise of the Robots. The game was presented as a technically advanced fighting game with digitized models and smooth animations. The Rise of the Robots project was built around a clear priority: to stand out visually in a market already full of fighting games. To achieve this, the team used digitized models and rendering techniques that required a significant investment in time and resources. This choice directly affected the rest of the development. The animation, though detailed, was not very useful for the control system. Movements were tied to long sequences, with slow transitions that made it less responsive. The visual feedback didn't always match the mechanical feedback, making it hard to predict or stop actions. The combat system was made simpler to fit these limits. The number of moves available stayed small and didn't have much variety. There was no real system for combos or managing space. Fights were based on repeating actions without any strategic growth. The artificial intelligence made these problems even bigger. Sometimes it was passive, easy to get around. Other times it reacted super fast and precisely, without any clear pattern. This back and forth wasn't because of a complex system, but because it wasn't set up right. The overall balance of the game also suffered from this. The characters didn't really offer different ways to play. The tactical options were limited, which made it less fun to play again. The result was a game where the cool graphics felt separate from the actual gameplay. All the effort put into the visuals wasn't brought together into a consistent game system. The game showed that in a genre that needs precise actions and quick reactions, good looks alone can't make up for a weak game. The idea for Shaq Fu started with a clear goal: to bring a famous sports star into a fighting game, where one person fights another. This meant they had to quickly learn how to make a game in a style that already had many rules. But the game system wasn't made as carefully as other popular fighting games. The biggest problem was with how the controls worked. The game wasn't very forgiving with button presses, and they didn't always do what you expected. Doing special moves required pressing buttons in ways that didn't make much sense, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. This made the game unreliable and hard to plan a good strategy. The way the characters moved also added to this problem. The movements didn't always match when characters hit each other, so players didn't get clear feedback. Hits didn't really show how hard they landed or how far away they were, making the game feel inaccurate all the time. The hitboxes were another big problem. Many times they didn't match what the characters looked like on screen. This made it confusing because what you saw wasn't what the game actually registered. This really messed up how easy it was to understand what was happening in a fight. Even though there were different characters, they didn't really play that differently. They all had a similar basic style, without any special moves that made them unique. This made the game less deep and less fun to play again and again. Overall, the game showed a big disconnect between the idea and how it was made. Having Shaq's name helped people see the game, but it didn't help make a good, consistent game system. The result was an experience that couldn't stand on its own because of its gameplay. It showed that even a strong outside element, like a famous person, can't make up for a weak game design. Double Dragon's move to a one-on-one style in Double Dragon 5 for the Mega Drive wasn't just a change in how the game was set up, but a change in how it was designed. The first beat-em-up game was all about moving left and right, handling groups of bad guys, and choosing which attacks to use first. But a fighting game needs very exact timing, knowing how far away your opponent is, and quick reactions. This change didn't come with enough new ideas for how the game should work in Double Dragon 5. The way you controlled the game stayed stiff, like in the old style of game. The animations, which were made for bigger, slower movements, didn't work well in a game that needed fast, connected actions. Moves felt slow to start and finish, making it hard to react quickly. The way attacks were set up also showed clear problems. There wasn't a clear order for light, medium, and heavy hits. The importance of attacks wasn't always the same, making fights hard to guess. The system didn't help with either attacking carefully or defending smartly. The character balance in Double Dragon 5 didn't make up for these problems. The differences felt shallow, without adding much to how the game played. This made it less interesting over time. The overall pace suffered. Fights didn't build up in a dynamic way. Instead, they were isolated moments, often not connected to each other. The experience felt broken up. The result was a loss of consistency. Double Dragon 5 didn't keep the good parts of the original beat-em-up and didn't gain what it needed to work as a fighting game. The change was incomplete, showing that switching genres needed more than just small tweaks. It needed a complete overhaul of the game's system. Action 52 was thought up as a product based on just one sales idea: to offer a lot of content inside one game cartridge. This way of thinking directly affected how it was made. The people working on it were split up into dozens of projects at the same time, which meant much less time was spent on each game. The result was a messy production. Many games didn't get past the early testing stage. Some had game loops that weren't finished, with no clear way to progress or win. In other cases, the code was unstable, with frequent crashes or unexpected things happening. The controls were a big problem. What you pressed on the controller didn't always work the same way, and how the character reacted changed without any clear reason. This made even simple actions hard, no matter what the individual game was like. From a visual standpoint, most of the games used very few assets and often reused them. The animations were simple, and the backgrounds were still and lacked detail. This wasn't a choice of style, but a direct result of how resources were spread out. The overall design also didn't make much sense. Each game felt alone, without a common direction or shared rules. There was no guarantee of a certain level of quality. The games weren't chosen because they were good, but because they were simply finished. The project showed a big problem. Adding more content without also adding more time and resources makes the average quality go down. Without a good review process, more stuff doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. Zool was made with a clear goal: to copy and make even stronger the feeling of speed that made popular platformer games of that time so great. This choice directly affected how the levels were built. They were filled with lots of interactive things, platforms, enemies, and items to collect. The problem showed up in how things looked. It wasn't always clear what was part of the game and what was just for show. Bright colors, repeated patterns, and detailed backgrounds made it hard to see where to go. Players didn't have clear markers, which made it tough to see what was coming or where to jump. The level design also added to the choppiness. The platforms didn't always follow a clear path, and some parts needed sudden changes in pace. This went against the idea of smooth movement, causing unexpected stops. The controls didn't help with these problems. The character's momentum and how it responded to commands weren't set up to handle high speeds in tricky areas. The game needed precise moves, but the controls didn't make that easy. This led to a mismatch between what the game wanted to do and how it actually played. Speed was supposed to be a main feature, but the design didn't make it easy to use. Without a clear layout, going fast didn't make the game better. It just made it harder to understand. Sword of Sodan was built around a clear visual choice, to make the sprites big and detailed, to give a sense of power. The characters took up a lot of the screen, and the animation tried to look more real than what was normal back then. But this way of doing things directly affected how responsive the game was. The animations were made of long sequences, with long startup and recovery times. This made it harder for the player to react quickly during fights. Every action took a long time, making it tough to adjust to situations in real time. The control system didn't help with this stiffness. What you pressed on the controller took a noticeable time to show up on screen, and judging distances felt off. The player didn't have good tools to control their attacks or defense. The combat system was also very basic. There weren't many options, so you couldn't really change how you played. There was no real way to get better at fighting, and the challenges didn't change much, so you didn't need new strategies. The levels didn't have enough new things to keep you interested for long. Things just kept happening the same way, and the pace never really changed or got exciting. So, what you saw didn't match how you played the game. The graphics looked deep and complicated, but the game itself didn't give you the tools to really explore that. The game was good at showing off its graphics, but it couldn't turn that into a fun and changing experience. Fatal Labyrinth used a structure based on procedural exploration and gradual progress. These things needed a good balance between risk, reward, and variety. The game made different dungeons each time you played, but the way the rooms were put together followed the same patterns. The rooms changed where they were, not what they did. This made the random parts less impactful, turning it into just a small change. The speed of the game was affected by how you moved and the fights you had. Moving was slow, and every action took a set amount of time without speeding up or having really tense moments. Fights were based on simple rules, with only a few things that could change. There weren't more complex systems, like different skills or ways to use the environment, which made the strategy less deep. The character's progress didn't really change how you played the game. Getting better stats made you stronger, but it didn't change your basic approach. You faced the same problems, just with different numbers, not with new tools. Also, there weren't many different kinds of enemies. Their actions were easy to guess, and you didn't have to change your strategy much. This made the game feel repetitive, where every fight was pretty much the same as the last. The rewards you got didn't make up for these problems. The items you picked up weren't different enough to make you think about what to do. Managing your inventory was okay, but it wasn't a big part of your strategy. Overall, the way the game was built didn't have enough complicated parts to make it interesting. Even though the levels changed, the experience didn't really change. Without new ways to play as you got further, the game quickly became boring, making it hard to play for a long time. Many of the less successful Mega Drive games came from movie or TV show licenses. These projects had deadlines tied to the film releases. This cut down the time they had to make the game. A lot of times, this meant the game ended up feeling unfinished or not very polished. The problem wasn't that the games couldn't be good, it was that there wasn't enough time. Many of the games that didn't do so well shared some common issues. Things like hitboxes not being quite right, controls that didn't always work the way you expected, and the game balance being all over the place. These things really messed with how players experienced the game. The game felt hard, not because it was a good challenge, but because it was just unpredictable. Back then, getting information was harder. Magazines were the main way people found out about games. Some games got good reviews at first because they looked cool, but over time, people started to see that the gameplay wasn't great. Word of mouth was a big deal in deciding if these games were good or bad. Even the games that weren't so good still taught us something. They showed us what didn't work. They proved that it's important to have both good graphics and good gameplay. Many game makers learned from these mistakes. Later games showed that people started paying more attention to how the game was designed. The Mega Drive remained one of the most important platforms of its time. Its game library had masterpieces and new ideas, but it also had games that didn't quite reach the same level. These weren't just mistakes, they were part of the process, because every system, even the most successful ones, was shaped not only by its wins, but also by its limits. And with that, our trip back in time comes to an end. How many of these fun facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more journeys into the world of retro gaming. Thanks for watching Retro Legends, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends.